Before we get really going, I just want to talk a bit about Property Rights Australia and what we're founded on and what we believe, who we are and what we do. And so we're established in 2003, so this is our 20th year. And we were established when Peter Beattie brought forward the Vegetation Act in 1999 and actually produced maps that were supposed to guide landowners of how to clear certain land. And these landowners were all around the Charleville area clearing fodder, mulga. And they were given these maps, they cleared the land, and the maps were incorrect. So the landholders were taken to court. So that's how we came about. We actually took the Beattie government to court and won 11 out of 14 cases. So that was back then, and this is now. So we're grassroots to the core, so we're from the bottom up, not the top down, which we're all experiencing. We're not for profit and we're not aligned to any political party. I can't say we've got much in common with the current government of the day here in Queensland though, unfortunately. So what we do, we hold government to account and the corporations, so the Powerlinks, the Queensland Hydro, all those types of organisations, for their actions regarding decisions that affect our property rights, our private property rights. So we also ensure detailed scrutiny of any evidence they use, any scientific evidence that they use. And we have links to a number of scientists that give us that information. So believe it or not, a lot of the information isn't evidence-based. It's modelled. A lot of information is modelled, which they use to base the foundation of legislation that they used against us. And we also provide a support network. So some people have been driven to destruction under a lot of different legislation that's based on modelling. They have committed suicide, they have lost their business, they have lost their livelihood. Remember, those livelihoods have been in the families for generations. And if they complain, they're focused and targeted on. So why are our property rights important? Both in urban, rural, whether you own a big farm, small farm, 600 square metres, whatever. Why are they important to us? So the erosion of property rights is one of the biggest issues facing all property owners and investors. Can you feel it? Look what's happened in Western Australia. Look how the government are just fairly flippant with our property rights. Oh, we've consulted. Out of a population of 10,000 people, we got 200 submissions back. Is that really consultation? No, it is not. It creates uncertainty, it stifles investment, job creation, threatens incomes and service delivery. Whether you own a suburban home or a broadacre farm, you have the right to exclusive access, use, and believe it or not, the opportunity to turn a dollar, to make a profit. Is that such a bad word? Legal recognition of the property rights is in the best interest of a fair, just, and prosperous society. Without property rights, we have nothing, and they are under threat every single day. So to lead on what Professor Plimer was saying, this is Queensland-based like a green energy emission target. So here we are now, look at 0%. We're heading for 2030, 50% emission targets, 2032, 70%. So Anna can have a green positive Olympics, which is very important for us all. 2035, 80%, and on a national basis, 80%. That's when 80% of baseload power generation will leave the grid. Just remember that. 2050, 100%. So tonight I'm going to talk about the green energy transition, but I'm going to say it in a way and give you examples of just what landholders are forced to do under different legislation, the Reef Act, the Vegetation Act. But what these renewable energy companies, most of them foreign, are allowed to do, and the damage that they're doing. So it's a snippet. So is everyone, the framework to achieve net zero in our national energy market, NEM. It's put out by the Australian Energy Market Operator, AEMO, and it's called the Integrated System Plan of 2022. It's like a roadmap of how they're going to transition our energy grid now to make it net free zero emissions by 2050. So it's got a number of different scenarios. It's quite comprehensive in their views, but it's just one plan. So the scale and the rate of change, I just want you to try and grasp this, because a lot of people don't realise what's happening in regions. And this is not just in Queensland, this is up and down the east coast of Australia as we speak right now. So we are installing, they call it variable renewable energy, because when the sun doesn't shine, you don't get any energy out of solar panels. And when the wind doesn't blow, you don't get any energy. You don't get any electricity, so it's variable. Okay, so we're installing industrial scale wind and solar. I won't call them farms, because they're not farms, they're complexes. Faster than any time in history and faster than any other country in history at this point in time. So to reach the 2050 target that's in the integrated system plan that I just mentioned, between 2020 and 2030, we've got to triple the industrial scale wind and solar complexes in that decade. In the next decade, we've got to double that again. And in the next decade, leading up to 2050, we need to double that again. So think about that. So what's it going to look like, this proposed green energy grid? Yeah? You hear Minister de Brenny and Bowen talk about it. It's all beautiful. They love wind turbines. Everyone just loves looking out and seeing how beautiful they are on the landscape. So we're going to have large-scale wind complexes. And remember, these just aren't pretty little windmills. They've got blades 100 metres long. The towers, these new ones, because they're building them bigger and bigger, are 170 to 180 metres high. So you just think of the material that goes into building these towers and the base they have to be on to withstand those conditions. 1,000 cubes of concrete are used in these big towers. Imagine the emissions off that. 1,000 cubes of concrete. And large-scale solar complexes. How large? Well, look at the recent one. I don't know if you've heard Ben Fordham recently, Sydney. 2,700 hectares south of Gladstone. 70 k's from the barrier reef. Prime agricultural land, grazing and cropping. And that's stage one of a 3-stage project. And a farmer's got to go up through that to reach his own property. He doesn't get any compensation. They clear every tree on the place, and there's big blue gums that you can't wrap your arms around. They're all gone for green energy. And of course you've got, they call it distributed solar, rooftop solar, which I don't mind in some respects. But because renewable energy through solar and wind, it's variable, like I said, so they need firming capacity. On those long dark nights, cloudy days or wind droughts, they need something to firm that power up. You would have heard of pumped hydro. There's one in the Pioneer Valley. There's one at Barumba. You know, they pump water up during the day using renewable energy apparently, let it go at night. One at Gympie, one at Barumba's 14.2 billion, so they say it's going to be, they reckon. Plus about $800 or $900 million for transmission lines. You're going to have utility scale batteries, big complexes of batteries to store power for an hour. half an hour, 20 minutes. But battery technology is improving. You've got coal-fired generation now, some gas-fired generation. That's going to stick around, but to reach the 2050 holy grail, it's going to be replaced by green hydrogen. Now, remember when I said one scenario, they call it, sorry, I'll go back to that, high voltage transmission lines. They're also in that AEMO integrated system plan. They say around 10,000 kilometres of high voltage transmission lines, but it could be up to 28,000. And that's up and down the eastern seaboard of Australia, not just in Queensland. And a lot of these high voltage transmission lines aren't just like your normal 275 kV lines, which are big enough. They're 500 kV, big fat cables. Up to 80 metre high towers, and the easements about 70 to 80 metres. They are massive. And they're two-way circuits that come out of these pumped hydros. So they can put power in when there's not enough renewable power to power it up, and they can pull power out. But what people don't realise also is that these pumped hydros and these big transmission lines that come out of them, they're also enablers to bring more industrial scale renewables to that area. It says so in the literature. I'm not making this stuff up. They want that to occur. So one of the scenarios in the integrated system plan put out by AEMO is called the step change scenario. So that's the tripling this decade, the double-double. There's another scenario, there's a slow scenario that just doesn't get to the 2050 targets, progressive scenario which just gets there, and there's also this scenario called the hydrogen superpower scenario. So that's when we produced green hydrogen through renewable energy to make green steel, to export green hydrogen. So that is 34 times the capacity of renewables that we have in this decade. That is going to be to 2050. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was capacity factor with renewables. So you might hear a lot of ministers say, well, this is going to power 2,000 homes or 200,000 homes. For how long? How regular will it power that? Capacity factor is what the difference between what it does power and the maximum capacity. So for solar, it varies around the world. In Queensland here, it could be around 20%, 22% of that's its capacity factor. So that's what it produces. No, not maximum all the time. For wind, it varies as well. Let's say 30%. It's kind of average figure. There's some wind farms, the Emerald Wind Farm that's been up the back of Mount Emerald Wind Farm up the back of Cairns. There's 2 months of the year where the wind doesn't blow at all. So guess what? It doesn't produce any power at all. There's another 2 months when the wind's very low. So it only produces 15% of the power. But you don't hear them say that, do you? When they open these things up and say what a great thing it's going to be. So under the step change scenario, the triple, double, double. So basically they're saying, this is straight out of the ISP, renewables would account for 98% of total annual generation by 2050, and renewables meet 100% of the demand approximately 65% of the time. The generation would be dominated by utility scale solar and wind energy, and a smaller proportion from rooftop solar. So here's an interesting map. It's all about the step change scenario. And in Queensland here, or right across the eastern seaboard, you have these renewable energy zones. And so that's by the end, this is actually wrong, there's a lot more wind and solar there at the moment than what they're saying is going to be at the end of this decade. And this is what they see in these renewable energy zones, what they think by 2050. Now have a look. I'm from the Wide Bay area, and look at the yellow is the solar, the blue is the wind. Have a look in the Darling Downs renewable energy zone. Yellow solar, blue is wind. How much area is that going to take up? Remember remember I talked about capacity factor? So in the Queensland's blueprint energy plan, the energy grid, they say we need another 25,000 megawatts by 2035 to meet our targets. Yeah? So they said it's going to come from rooftop solar, a small amount, but it's going to come mostly from utility scale wind and solar, the big ones. Yeah. So they say 2,700 more wind turbines are going to be required by 2035 in Queensland. And that's going to cover roughly 600,000 hectares. You go, 600,000 hectares, that's not too much. But remember the capacity factor, 30%. So it's 33%. You can times that amount by 3 because that's how much they're going to build to actually achieve those targets, whether they do. So you're looking at 1.8 million hectares under wind turbines by 2035. And when industrial size solar farms, they say only 40,000 hectares is going to be required by 2035. You go, 40,000 hectares. It's still a lot. But you know, you've got to times that by another 4. So you see what's happening? So you can see that map. There are areas in our rural landscape that are just going to be a pincushion of transmission lines, solar panels and wind turbines. Can you see the industrialisation of the landscape? So just keep that picture in your mind of the scale that we're talking about. Yeah? So what are the issues with that current approach? What's happening? So they all rave on about social licence, you know, if the community accept it and keep accepting it through the life of the project. They have no social licence. People have moved out to the country for the amenity. There's generational farms there. People have been on there for 150 years, 160 years, and they're going to go and put this all over them. What they're doing, they're rolling out a few what they call trophy landowners in some areas where they get the best deal. They get the most money. And people go, geez, that's a pretty good idea, look at it. But remember, what if you live next to one of these monstrosities? Already, and there's hard data up and down the east coast, even transmission lines. You live within a kilometre of a big transmission line, 30 to 50% reduction in property value. So it's all right for some. See how it splits communities? You've got some, mate, yeah, well, I'm making a fortune, it helps me balance drought out. Why isn't it a good thing? And then you've got landholders like, look, south of the Nango, there's a 600 hectare solar farm they're looking at putting in. The guy doesn't even live there, but everyone else around them do live there. And they're complaining about it, but it will potentially go ahead. There is no environmental licence. Who is speaking for the animals, the flora and fauna that are getting decimated? And I'll go into this a bit more and show you some photos that might shock you. Some of you might have seen some photos on the net. One of the biggest killers of wedge-tailed eagles in Queensland, this is from the own government fact sheet, guess what? Transmission lines. Smash them. There was a fire in Gympie the other day from a transmission line, 150 acres got burned out. Do you think we're going to have aerial support dumping water bombs on the place to put out fire when you've got rotors that reach 300 metres into the air on the top of mountain tops? Have they thought of that? So really the key thing for us is the lack of strategic assessment and analysis to inform the roadmap that looks at renewable energy projects' cumulative impacts on landscape, nature, biodiversity and social impacts. Because you've got people leaving these regions. When they see maps like that and the rate of development, they're out of there. Because once these lines are put in, it attracts more. It attracts big solar complexes and big wind complexes. And people just don't want to live next to that stuff. They didn't move there to live next to that stuff. They are bird chompers and bat killers. We had a Strangely enough, it does happen and has happened before. Big hailstorm near Waluga, west of Gympie last year on their big solar farm. 23,000 panels got wiped out in one solar farm, one hailstorm, and they were surprised. We don't get hailstorms in this area. Well, yes, we do. So where did those solar panels all go to? Into landfill. China kept selling more and more to us, and we keep putting them in. Decommissioning problems. Solar panels and wind turbines to landfill. And remember the concrete pads? These things only last 20 years. You know, they're supposed to be intergenerational assets. 20 years. What about the 1,000 cubes of concrete they punch into the base? What's going to happen to that? How will agriculture be affected? What about all the biosecurity issues? Look at all the fire ants you guys are dealing with here. 800,000 hectares of infested country. And they're bringing all this stuff from here out west. There's already been issues with the potential threats of movement of material from here out west and around the Toowoomba area with fire ants. And when you break virgin country up or you put transmission lines through farming country, any disturbance, it's noted in biosecurity discipline. You look at these things, you call them spread pathways, high risk pathways, because you're cutting across so many countries, one easement. It's a spread pathway for weeds and pest animals and so forth. The property values are going down. People are leaving the area. People that were going to build there around the Kilkeevan area, west of Gympie, there's a number of people leaving because they can see what the roadmap is. And that's splitting the community, and it's not good. It's going to impact tourism. I don't know if anyone, you want to come out and see all the wind farms on the top of the ranges? Isn't it beautiful? Not me, thanks. Critical habitat destruction and erosion. Now, just the wind turbines alone, from Rockhampton to Cairns, as of June 2023, now here you go, there is 10,178 hectares of koala habitat that is being destroyed, just out of the wind turbines. And that's remnant vegetation. That is virgin vegetation that is being decimated. And I'll show you a few photos soon. And remember, there's another thing I want to talk to you about. It's called reef legislation. So reef legislation, a lot of it's model data, not factual data. So we've got issues with it straight away. So consider reef legislation like a big electric regulatory blanket that's been rolled out across the 6 reef catchments. I'm in one, I'm in the Burnett Merry one. So I've got to keep 50% ground cover by the end of September each year, which most good farmers do. You should be able to do that. We've got no problems with that. Some of the things that come with it though, we can get audited by the reef police. They fly across, they don't particularly, but in satellites, taking imagery of our property. We can get audited by the reef police for having bare areas on our country the size of a dining table. I'm just pitching this to you. Okay? So we've got that to live on. We've got to show them all our records of how much fertiliser we put on, how much herbicides we use, when did we use it, what's your stock, how many stock you running, Jim, when did you move and what paddock did you move into. And they can walk on. We can't stop them. We've got to keep all these records for 7 years, and there is massive fines for non-compliance. So we've got these rules to live by. There's one of those big wind turbines. It's about 280 metres tall. Each blade is 100 metres long. Remember, there's 1,000 cubes of concrete in the base. And you can notice the bare area here. Remember, we can't have a bare area the size of a dinner table. We get in trouble. we get a knock on the door. Remember, that's all virgin scrub around there. On the top of these things are on the top of ranges, not out in the middle of the desert. I'll just whip through some photos for you. So these are all from central and northern Queensland. Look at this. So remember there's big access roads. This is all heavy industrial equipment that they move up here. The access roads are up to 70 to 80 metres wide to get up to the top of the ranges. They estimate there's 400 kilometres that needs to be established just to do these wind farms that are in play now at June 2023 of roads. On the top of ranges, that is near the reef. Can you see the regulatory umbrella that farmers are under? You've got to do this. We're going to come around and see you. I've got to apply for a permit to go out and plant a crop if it's over 10 hectares and I sell it off my property. Do you know that? I've got to apply for a permit. Depending on the size, if it's 250 hectares, it could cost me $20,000. Did you know that? I like when they say in their literature too, oh, this is just, yeah, that's permanent disturbance. It's destroyed. And it is destroyed forever. Don't believe what they say when, oh, we're going to pick up that biodiversity and we're going to plant more trees over here. What about all the bugs, the beetles, the koalas? Where are they going to go? They're going to die. Some more photos just goes to show the scale. Remember, this is all virgin timber on top of ranges. Look at that. So that's the start of a base. That's not a finished base, believe me. Look at the beautiful timber they are destroying. There's some of the haul roads that come up to it. And remember the erosion that's going to take place here. Remember these are all coastal, quite close to the coast. What do you think is going to happen when a cyclone comes down? You see why landholders are quite angry? It's all right for them, but not for us. What happens when this stuff does run over and out into the reef and they say, oh, the water quality targets need to be increased? You now need 90% ground cover by the end of September. You're going to have to sell some stock. See what's happening? This is your food security. See the windmills in the distance, yeah? Wind turbines. Why Labor and the Greens pride themselves on being conservationists, yeah? They're standing up. Well, where are they on this? All De Brenny's done, oh, we're going to, this is all code accessible. They call it wind code, wind development code 23. Oh, we've listened to you, we're going to make some changes. It's still it's not impact accessible. So that means they don't even have to talk to landowners next door or the community to put these things in because it's not impact accessible. Remember, these are a lot of foreign companies. We are just rolling out the red carpet. They built out Europe and other countries with all these monstrosities, and now they're coming here. And why wouldn't they? There's no legislative cloud over their head. They get paid to do it. They send in the greasers to try and woo over the community. Look at the jobs, Jim, the jobs. It's about as much jobs as what goes into a McDonald's. Looking at the Kingaroy area, they're going to close down Tarong Power Station, which employs 500 people, plus the contractors. What's going to happen to our community there? And give us 15 jobs for a wind farm complex. So there's one of the bases. That's where your 1,000 cube goes. Because you imagine the height of these things, the stresses they'll be under in wind. It goes on. There's one of the bases under the construction there. So these are some of the impacts. You know, a lot of this stuff, that's a barking owl chick. They've been sighted in these areas. Who's speaking up for them? Are Labor speaking up for them? Are the Greens speaking up for them? They can't speak up for themselves, can they? They're cannon fodder. But you know, farmers are bad environmentalists. Greater Glider. So Greater Glider, 6,780 hectares are being destroyed of critical Greater Glider habitat. Know that? Is that in the press? There he is again. Wedge-tailed eagles. What's going to happen to them when they fly into the rotors? And the transmission lines. Where they're putting these big transmission lines just near Kilkevin to plug into the pumped hydro, the Barumba pumped hydro at Gympie, you know, there are dozens and dozens of families of wedge-tailed eagles there, right through where they're going to put this. But this is green. This is part of the green transition. It's good. How can you destroy biodiversity and save the planet? Tell me. Rock wallabies, honey eaters, and the koala. Remember, over 10,000 hectares of koala habitat is being destroyed with the wind farms that are on the cards now, June 2023. The masked owl, the northern spotted quoll. But it's all good. It's all green. The red goshawk. What are we doing about it? We're only a small organisation. We're not big. We haven't got that much money. But we fight. What we want, and what the Nationals be saying, is just to just stop and let's plan this out properly. Let's look at all the alternatives. What's the rush? Are we all going to get boiled alive? We want to push for a federal Senate inquiry. It's not just our group. There is dozens and dozens of groups up and down the eastern seaboard that are pushing for a federal Senate inquiry to get all this data shown and look at the governance mechanisms for all these companies rolling out this crap. But guess what? The Nationals have tried with the Liberals in a federal Senate 6 times now. And Labor and the Greens keep knocking it back with the help of POCOT. They care about the environment. Farmers are destroying the environment. So we've embarked on a truth-telling campaign. And it's doing stuff like this. And we support the action groups. We provide support to the action groups. We help them with legal representation and we help them to unify. Because one thing these corporations are good at is divide and conquer. And when you have a community, what we've found through the last 20 years, once you divide it, it weakens it. And that's when the greasers move in. And that's what destroys communities. Do you want your community, do you want your regional and rural cousins to be destroyed like this? Because that is what is going to happen under this plan. And that is what is happening. Next year there's elections. Local government and state government in Queensland. And we are asking, and we continue to ask, what is the policy position of both major parties and minor parties? Heard nothing yet. We can't tell you yet. It's too far out from the election year, but we'll have something. Just be careful when they do. It's just not smoke and mirrors and a bit of a release valve. We want a Senate inquiry into this just to woo up, to look, to stop before it's too late. So quite recently there was I think everyone here heard of PETA, people It's ethical treatment of animals. Yep. So they put a billboard, I won't show it on this slide, in Rockhampton, the beef capital of Australia. And it says, if you eat meat, that a bit of beef on a fork, you're killing koalas. You're killing koalas, you evil farmers. So we responded and said, you think koalas feel more at home here? Get a grip. This is where they feel more at home. Research, it's not just us saying this, research has indicated koalas do better on beef properties that are sustainably grazed and managed. We control our weeds, we control our pest animals, and we do cool burns to stop the thickening. What do you think happens into a lot of national parks? Not all of them. They don't control their weeds. They don't do burns, and when they do when it is burnt, there's wildfires. And guess what's happened to the koalas? Can you see the misinformation and deception that's going on? They are painting us as environmental vandals. But look what they're doing. Just in conclusion, under this approach, rural and regional areas are the losers. There's loss of nature, community, amenity and farmland. That is what's happening. That is the outcome of this approach. Regional communities are now being blamed. It started in Victoria. You can see a hint of it now. You know, there's some Professor Blake from the National University of Australia saying, I don't see what the justification is for all the jumping up and down by these action groups. What's a few power lines, a few wind turbines, a few solar farms? We've got to get this done as quick as possible. The world is boiling. So they are turning this narrative that it is our fault, that we haven't given them social licence to carry this out. It's a bit weird, don't you think? But they are convincing city people that it was us. This is us. This is our fault. You know, this is happening. Thank you.